The Qf 12-pounder 12 Cwt gun, abbreviated as Qf 12 PDR 12 Cwt, was a common, versatile 3-inch, 76.2 mm caliber naval gun introduced in 1894 and used until the middle of the 20th century. It was produced by Armstrong Whitworth, Elswick, and used on Royal Navy warships, exported to Allied countries, and used for land service. In British service, 12-pounder was the rounded value of the projectile weight, and 12 Cwt, hundredweight, was the weight of the barrel and breech, to differentiate it from other 12-pounder guns. As the Type 41 3-inch, 76.2 mm /40, it was used on most early battleships and cruisers of the Imperial Japanese Navy, though it was commonly referred to by its UK designation as a 12-pounder gun. Mk-2 guns, a built-up construction of multiple steel layers, served on many Royal Navy destroyers up to and after World War I, originally as primary and later as secondary armament against submarines and torpedo boats. They were also fitted as deck guns on DNE-class submarines. It was estimated that out of the 4,737 Mki and Mk2 guns produced, there were still 3,494 on hand for the RN in 1939. Many Mkv guns, which had a monoblock barrel made of a single casting, served on smaller escort ships such as destroyers and unarmed merchant ships, on dual-purpose high-low-angle mountings, which also allowed it to be used as an anti-aircraft gun. The gun was primarily a high-velocity naval gun, with its heavy recoil suiting it to static mountings, hence it was generally considered unsuitable for use as a mobile field gun. An exception was made when the British Army were outgunned by the Boer artillery in South Africa and the Royal Navy was called on for help. Among other guns, 16 Qf 12-pounder 12 Cwt were landed from warships and were mounted on improvised field carriages designed by Captain Percy Scott RN, with solid wooden trails and utilizing small-diameter Cape wagon wheels. Their 10,000-yard, 9,100 in range provided valuable long-range fire support for the Army throughout the war. They were known as Long 12s to distinguish them from the BL 12-pounder 6 Cwt and Qf 12-pounder 8 Cwt, which had much shorter barrels and ranges. Lieutenant Byrne reported that the original electric firing system, while working well under ideal conditions, required support of an armorer and the maintenance and transport of charged batteries in the field, which was generally not possible. He reported switching to percussion tubes for firing and recommended percussion for future field operations. Another 6 guns were diverted from a Japanese battleship being built at Newcastle in January 1900, bought by Lady Moore, and were equipped with proper field carriages by the Elswick Ordnance Company in Newcastle and sent to South Africa. Perhaps uniquely, the guns were refused by the War Office and donated directly to Lord Roberts, the British commander in South Africa, and became his personal property. They were known as the Elswick Battery and were manned by men from Elswick, recruited by 1st Northumberland Royal Garrison Artillery, volunteers. The Elswick guns served throughout the war. Many guns were mounted on pedestals secured to the ground to defend harbours around the UK, and at many ports around the Empire, against possible attack by small fast vessels such as torpedo boats, until the 1950s. There were 103 of these guns, of a total 383 of all types, employed in coast defense around the UK as at April 1918. Many of these were still in service in World War II, although they had by then been superseded by more modern types such as twin Qf 6-pounder 10 Cwt mounts. Guns were traversed, moved from side to side, manually by the gun layer as he stood on the left side with his arm hooked over a shoulder piece as he aimed, while he operated the elevating handwheel with his left hand and grasped the pistol grip with trigger in his right hand. In World War I, a number of coast defense guns were modified and mounted on special wheeled traveling carriages to create a marginally effective mobile anti-aircraft gun. UK shells weighed 12.5 pounds 5.67 kilograms filled and fused. The cordite propellant charge was normally ignited by an electrically activated primer in the base of the cartridge case, with power provided by a battery. The electric primer in the cartridge could be replaced by an adapter which allowed the use of electric or percussion tube to be inserted to provide ignition. The Italian cannon 76/40 model 1916 was a licensed derivative of the Qf 12-pounder used in a number of roles during World War I and World War II. The Japanese Type 41 3-inch, 76 mm naval gun was a direct copy of the Qf 12-pounder. The first guns were bought from the English firms as Elswick Pattern and Vickers Mark Z guns. The gun was officially designated as the Type 41 3-inch, 76 mm naval gun from the 41st year of the reign of Emperor Meiji on December 25, 1908. Thereafter production was in Japan under license. On October 5, 1917, during the third year of the Taisho period, the gun was redesignated as the 8cm/43rd year type naval gun as part of the Imperial Japanese Navy's conversion to the metric system. Although classified as an 8 cm gun, the bore was unchanged. The gun fired a 12.5 pound, 5.7 kilograms, high explosive shell. It was the standard secondary or tertiary armament on most Japanese warships built between 1890 and 1920, and was still in service as late as the Pacific War. The 8cm/43rd year type was also widely used as a coastal defense gun and anti-aircraft gun to defend Japanese island bases during World War II. Guns with both English and Japanese markings were found on Kiska, Kalimbangara, Saipan, Tarawa, and Tinian. Japanese artillery weapons Sinpak Sinpo bullet in 152-45 calls the guns 8 cm coast defense gun 13th year type, 1924, but it isn't clear how they came up with that designation. A gun of the Elswick battery that served in the Second Boer War is displayed in the Royal Artillery Museum, London, but the museum has closed and relocated to Larkhill, Wiltshire. Another Elswick gun is with 203, Elswick, Battery RA.V. MKV naval gun was at Royal Artillery Museum, London, but the museum has closed and relocated to Larkhill, Wiltshire. Early coast defence gun at New Haven Fort, UK. Coast defence gun at Army Memorial Museum, Wairua, New Zealand. On the battleship Mikasa, Yokosuka, Japan. The gun of HMS Campbelltown, recovered around 1972, on display in Saint-Nazaire, France. 12 PDR on coastal defense pedestal at Pendennis Castle, Falmouth, Cornwall. http://www.english-heritage.org.uk/visit/places/pendennis-castle. The gun of HMS Overdale Wyke of the Ceylon Naval Volunteer Force, now kept in SLNS Ranagal. A good example can be seen mounted at Tilbury Fort in Essex. This is an ex-naval type of WW2 vintage. Textbook of Gunnery, 1902. London, printed for His Majesty's Stationery Office, by Harrison and Sons, St. Martin's Lane. Brown, D.K., 2003. Warrior to Dreadnought, Warship Development 1860 to 1905. Book sales. ISBN 978-1-84067-529-0. Brown, D.K., 2003. The Grand Fleet, Warship Design and Development 1906 to 1922. Caxton Editions. ISBN 978-1-84067-531-3. Lieutenant C.R.N. Byrne R.N., with the Naval Brigade in Natal, 1899 to 1900. London, Edward Arnold, 1902. Farndale, General Sir Martin, 1988. History of the Royal Regiment of Artillery. The Forget in Fronts and the Home Base, 1914 to 18. Royal Artillery Institution, London. ISBN 978-1-8701114-05-9. Gardiner, Robert, Lambert, Andrew, eds. 2001. Steam, Steel, and Shellfire, the Steam Warship, 1815 to 1905. Conway's History of the Ship. Book sales. ISBN 978-0-7858-1413-9. Hodges, Peter, 1981. The Big Gun, Battleship Main Armament, 1860 to 1945. United States Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-0-87021-917-7. Hogg, I.V., and Thurston, L.F., 1972. British Artillery Weapons and Ammunition 1914 to 1918. Ian Allen, London. ISBN 978-0-7110-0381-1. Parks, Oscar, 1990, 1957. British Battleships. United States Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-1-55750-075-5. Admiral Percy Scott, 50 Years in the Royal Navy, published 1919. Campbell, John, 1985. Naval Weapons of World War II. Naval Institute Press. ISBN 978-0-87021-459-2.